Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Azure Security. My name is Dinan Paardenkoper. I'm a security cloud architect at IT Impressive. And today I have John on the other side. John, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks, Nat. My name is Jon Hope. I am an Azure Security Architect here at MSP in Richmond, Virginia.
Cool. Amazing to have you here on the other side of the globe.
Yeah.
It's funny. Um, for today, we have an advanced topic, and it's defense, the real world defense in depth strategies in a security architecture way. And it's a mouthful, but John, can you give us more information on that?
Yeah, would love to. Yeah, I think the idea, what I like to do in the industry is I like to talk about defense in depth strategies around identity and how both Azure and Entra ID security play a pivotal role in securing the tenant for clients. And it's been a top focus of mine for roughly the past 4.5 years as far as building this out in an automated way. And if it works, I'd love to dive in and kind of discuss some of the conversations I've been having, but bring a real world approach to the different, SMB clients that we're dealing with and how we're able to provide a secure solution for them.
That sounds amazing. I think it's a hard topic sometimes for a lot of companies, and definitely to keep it secure and safe.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea what you mentioned about Entra and conditional access, and looking forward to hear more about it.
Yeah. That sounds great. Excited to be here.
Cool. Do you want to share something on your screen or?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and share on my screen. This is a slide illustrating kind of the points that I was just bringing up. How the conversation that we have in the industry around securing a Microsoft Entra tenant and the real world conversations we've been having with customers. I think today the concept of secure cloud or as I call it, secure cloud foundation, a lot of clients don't seem to understand the criticality of securing the identities that exist in Microsoft. A lot of them are still stuck in a legacy mindset of I've got on-prem servers, I've got a firewall on-prem, and I'm secure, am I not? And that's not the world we live in. We live in a fast-moving, OAuth and OpenID Connect type of world where identities exist in the cloud, and conditional access at its core is the way that we protect those identities in the cloud. And so trying to bridge the gap for these clients and explain that without a good defense in depth security posture, it's leaving them open to those type of attacks. And that's why we hear about all these business email compromise attacks. And I'm going to be honest, with the AI driven future, we're going to probably hear more of those AI driven phishing and
Definitely.
workload identity attacks.
Yeah, I think you touch upon an important topic because AI is not going away anymore. So we also have to change our security posture, right?
Exactly. But yeah, if it works for you, I'd love to kind of talk about what it is that we do and how we go over it and how it pertains to a managed service provider environment, and if that works for you.
By all means.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. So, the first thing is getting this conversation out of the way. But once we do it, it's really about how do we present the value of what a baseline looks like. And so I'm going to jump over here. Going to start right here. So what we do is we have a conversation with them, and we typically come in and I discuss with them the ideas of securing the identity, and what that means is conditional access. But one of the challenges that we have in the MSP space is I come in as a security architect and I deploy these baselines. But for a lot of times in the MSP space, we are the source of truth. We are the support staff for them. And that what happens day two, once everything's been deployed and the phone calls start coming into the help desk. And that's really where what I've tried to accomplish is build out extensive documentation so that a team can really understand the naming, the personas. I know Yelena had a great session and talked about the persona-based identity, and it's a great concept and it's a great thing to have. But you got to make sure that your support staff knows what those concepts and those personas are actually doing. And so what we've done is we've broken it all down into documentation that really outlines what the policies are aiming to do and how they're going to control the environment. And then this helps from a support staff on how to actually support and understand, well, if someone is going out of town, well, what is that group that I'm supposed to put them in so that they can be excluded from X policy? And so this documentation led to what you see right here, which is basically our approach at a project breakdown for securing identities. And so what we do here is we take a pretty extensive approach, and we try to cover all licensing identities. There's a lot to be said for P2 licensing and what it can do, but we're talking to customers who today are Entra ID free, and they don't actually have the ability to use conditional access, and we're explaining to them the benefits of business premium license, which in my
Right.
opinion is an amazing SKU.
Basically a use case like, hey, we're going to protect you. We need specific licenses because it's required, but
Exactly.
also keep in mind to protect the real people which are on the way or traveling, or I don't know.
Exactly. Yep. And trying to help them understand the risk that's out there and the best way to protect them. And so what we do is we start with a breakdown, and we break each of these out into a separate project, because at the end of the day, conditional access can have an impact, some high, some lower. So what we do is we have what we call our global policies, and the documentation breaks this down, but the explanation is essentially a global policy is designed to block all users, all apps. They are not specific to any organization. They are general best practices that should be maintained throughout the company. And my idea was to just kind of go through some of these basic policies, what you see here, and kind of break down and explain them. One of the things that we do is we try to separate administrative and privileged role identities from all daily driver accounts. So you'll notice here, if we look at some of our policies that are in play, you're going to notice that we have an MFA for all admins. We also have an MFA passkey for ADM users, and so that's a very similar thing. These two policies essentially do a very, very similar thing. This one, and the idea of this one is we create an account .admin for said user, and that's what we assign all privileged roles to. And so we have an extensive, you can kind of see the description of what this is supposed to do: secure admin level accounts with phishing resistant MFA. We have these conversations with the clients, but at the end of the day, clients, sometimes there's a hybrid IT approach where there's a on-prem administrator. They may make a change that provide administrative functionality to a daily driver user account. So what we do is we have a backup, and this is where the defense in depth approach really takes flight. Ideally, all permissions are tied to those admin accounts, but say a change was made and someone was given an elevated role. This policy's job is to go in and just look at all administrative roles. And if there is an administrative role, then go ahead and still protect that with some form of modern MFA phishing resistance at its core, ideally.
So basically, the back door is sealed, right?
Exactly. And that's really the idea of defense in depth, because, zero trust, defense in depth, these words are great industry words that we use. Zero trust is very hard. A lot of clients, we go in and they say, we want zero trust. And they don't understand that means implicitly blocking everything and allowing based on usage. And so it creates, sometimes what happens is customers will get frustrated and then they're like, nope, revert this back. And so what we've tried to do is take a best practice of the joining of defense in depth and zero trust architecture, making sure that whenever we make an exception to the rule, there's something that they fall back on that is going to then require an additional security practice. So this is a great example right here, using the MFA for admin roles and securing those down. But yeah, one of the ones that I would say we run into more than anything. I Here in the States, I work for a lot of we manage a lot of healthcare organizations, and inside those healthcare organizations, we have doctors who are traveling constantly, and their job never really stops. They go out of the country, and they still want to access to their email. They want to be able to do what it is they need to do. And that makes sense. And so what we do is we have what look to be two very similar policies. Countries not allowed, and then countries not allowed with exclusions. And you can see here again, the idea is to document and help people understand. Okay, well, what is this doing? And this is really a fail-safe policy for the original countries not allowed. And the reason we do that is because what we find a lot of times is in the real world, when people start making these policies, they're going to go out, they're going to call the help desk. The help desk is going to say, okay, I've got Dr. So-and-so. They need access to their email. Okay. And they look at the documentation and they go, okay, I see this CA-traveling users group. I'm going to add them to that. Well, when you do that, and I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to show you a little demo of this, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. So here you can see, again, two of the same policies, right? Countries not allowed, no exclusions. And what I'm doing over here is I'm just going through a basic scenario. I've got one of my users. This is a test user, just targeting the 365 portal. It's coming in from a modern authentication client. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to access his email from Afghanistan. Well, you can see here that both these policies blocked him. So that's great. But what happens when user 2 or that same user calls in and says, nope, I am here. I am in country X overseas. I need access to my email. If we've done our job right, we've tried to lock it down to only the countries that we know that we're doing business in or they are doing business in, but that's not always the case. And so what happens is they call the help desk. Someone at the help desk puts them into the CA traveling users group. You can even see here, and we'll maybe touch upon this at some point, but I've got some Azure automation that what it did is when the help desk user puts them into the group, it kicks off an Azure runbook using an automation account. And then there's a logic app that checks and sends me an email. For me, I like to send everything to Teams, but you can see here that this user was put into the traveling users group. So inevitably, there's now a gap. And you can see here where because they were excluded, they did not get blocked by the initial policy. Doesn't mean that they still shouldn't get blocked from Afghanistan. They're most likely not going to Afghanistan or another country. North Korea, China. There's a list of countries that are highly susceptible to attacks that we have to ensure are being blocked because there would inevitably be a compromise from some of those surrounding countries. So by creating a defense in depth approach and having that backfill, even though they were excluded from the one policy, we're still able to ensure that they're not able to access anything from any of the immediate countries and emerging threat countries that potentially they should not be accessing anything from. And so that's where taking a layered approach to ensuring if you exclude them from one policy, there is something backfilling that they're going to get either blocked and or prompted for a higher level of authentication. So yeah, that would
And
be.
you have your documentation, right? I mean,
Exactly.
notification in your teams
E-
in this case.
Exactly. And I mean,
And you have,
that's really where the power of Azure comes in, because by default, a business premium client isn't going to have that kind of access. But what we do is you can see here, we have a CA exclusion group, we have a traveling user group. And what we're doing is we're running on a routine schedule. We're just running an automation runbook that's checking the date on that group. And then it's using a logic app to send back that. So, we always know what's actually happening. We do this across the board. And so this kind of really paints the picture of how you can use Azure to help secure the Entra ID tenant. And so you can see here, yeah, this is where we have a logic app that sends the data back. Yep. And yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing because if you don't fill in the gaps, then at least you have your insights being visible.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. And I mean, let me kind of come back here. What we try to do is we do this across the board, right? And so we have these global policies that we talked about. And recently, what I've started expanding the conversation out to is how we protect those workload identities. So that's definitely an area that I think is maybe doesn't have as much attention. In fact, I know we've talked about it in the past, but the SC300, that was one of the focal points. A lot of it is around workload identities, enterprise apps, but I don't think there's as many conversations happening around how to protect those. And now after Ignite, even more so, how we protect agents, right? I think that's going to become a pretty critical
Yep.
topic. So I've actually done a post here recently that ties in and visually talks about the attack and defense playbook, which is an amazing playbook with amazing insight. But it does require a premium workload license, premium ID, premium one, in order to protect the interconnect workload. And so you can see this was actually a policy that we added in recently to our policies to protect, because let's be honest, there's a lot of clients are still in a hybrid state. We love to believe that everyone's going to be cloud only and everything's going to be cloud only, but
No,
yeah, it's just
it's not gonna
it's
happen.
it's not realistic. Microsoft's doing some amazing things with source of authority. There were some exciting announcements at Ignite, right? Especially for me, I'm an AVD lover of everything AVD, and so some exciting announcement about finally getting cloud only support for FS Logics. But at the end of the day, identity is still very hybrid, and so being able to monitor the synchronization mechanisms for Entra ID Connect is going to be a critical one, and not only monitoring but controlling where that synchronization is able to occur from. And I think the architects behind the attack and defense playbook do a great job of breaking down. If anyone hasn't gone through that, I highly recommend the attack and defense playbook as far as how to secure those on-prem and prevent lateral movement. So that's been a topic here recently. But what we do is after the global policies have been deployed out, we've been able to secure the environment. Then typically, as I said, we take a phased approach. So the next project phase that we dig into are app specific settings for the environment. So
Okay.
this is going to be collaborative with the client as far as what applications they're using, how they're accessing SharePoint, OneDrive, really locking those down, because those are huge points of once an attacker's been able to gain access, they want access to your data. And so it's where things like Purview and additional conditional access policies and even Defender for Cloud are really going to come in and help prevent access to these different technologies. So, and from there, what we do is, you can see here, we take, again, once we've finished up with the applications, we typically do an entire Intune project where we're going to work on optimizing the getting all the devices into Intune, making sure we've got compliance policies built in, and from there, ensuring that we have conditional access that aligns. And what you can see here is, once again, you'll notice where we have two policies that do very similar things, and there's great reasons for this. And again, I've tried to put in some documentations on why we do this way. And so one of the things you'll notice here is with the Intune grant required compliant devices, this is an internal policy. So once we've got everything joined to Intune, the idea of this policy There's actually a great article, and I'll share it with you so you can put it in the video. So it talks about the difference between using compliant devices versus filtering for devices. And this is, I think, this is a great topic to touch on when it comes to security, conditional access, and how Intune plays a critical part in that, but also how attackers will take any information they can to try to help them gain an advantage to gaining access. And so the idea of these two policies is that if you use the typical required device to be marked as compliant, it actually gives an attacker information that you have a conditional access policy that requires a compliant device. And that's great if you're on a trusted network. So the idea of the first policy is to ensure that if a user is on-prem and their device just isn't compliant, that we're giving them some information so that they can call the help desk and go, hey, it sounds like my device isn't compliant. I can't gain access to it. And so that's the idea of using the marked device as compliant and using that setting in order for them to access resources they need from a trusted location. But everywhere else that's not trusted, the idea is to filter for the devices and ensure that we're filtering down to only devices that are joined to Entra, to Azure AD. And so what happens there is you get no information. When you filter for the device that way, the information is actually not presented. They just don't gain access, and it just says you cannot access this resource. So there's a lot less information. And the idea there is to ensure that we're giving an attacker who may be outside a trusted location trying to gain access with a compromised account, we're trying to give them as least information as possible. And so that's again, yep. So, but yeah, so that's that would be what we do for the device management side of things. And then, as you can see here, we want to ensure that we're including, access for our P2 clients. We do have a number of clients that do have the full E5 suite and access to P2. So what we're doing there is we're gonna create a subset of policies that's gonna protect them. It's gonna use things like if they're using PIM, they're going to to re-authenticate up to critical data. We want to protect that with PIM and re-authentication access. And actually, oddly enough, I started when I got back from Ignite, I started playing around with agents and what that would look like. And so I've recently just added these agent policies, and this is kind of my first run at what it would look like to protect agents within conditional access. And so if you look at the Microsoft documentation, we definitely want, if we have a P2, we want to block those high-risk agent and agent identities that exist. The other kind of zero trust approach is, I can actually take you in and show you an example of this. The idea is I don't want any agents communicating to any data unless I have explicitly marked them. So what I'm doing here, at least what I've started off with testing, is I'm going into my agent identities and I'm excluding based on a security attribute. So I'm approving any of the AI agents that I see, and I'm putting a custom security attribute for approved agents on them. And that's the zero trust type approach of me going, okay, if people add things in, that's fine. It's not gonna be able to communicate to any of the apps, not until we go in and we explicitly put a security attribute on the agent to allow it to talk.
Cool. Awesome. I think this definitely is required and necessary. So
Yeah, no. And I want to point out, I mean, there are reasons, right, for the whole idea of zero trust. We do a number of policies around that. And what we find is that in the day-to-day, what we do with a lot of these policies is these policies, we deploy them to the environment and they act as an immediate threat response to what would happen if there was a tenant compromise, right? At the end of the day, we try our best to prevent everything that we can. But if a tenant is compromised, We have mechanisms to get in through break glass accounts, which Yelena did an amazing job of discussing and going in depth on. And then once in, using those zero trust assignments to just start blocking access to everything. Because the idea is, what do you do in the heat of the moment once the issues have happened? And that's not the time you want to be thinking, oh, how do I create a conditional access policy to just block access to everything? You want to have this pre-staged ahead of time. And so that's one of the things we do, and love to at some point go into how I do that incident response in Azure and what that looks like. I know that's a separate topic for a separate day for sure, but it's definitely something that as a security architect, you got to be thinking about ahead of time, because when the moment hits, it's going to be, it's not the time you want to be building it on the fly. Let's just say that.
No, no, definitely not. And if I may ask,
Yeah.
how often do you test this with a customer, the break
The
glass account? Is that
the
something that
the
you do
break
with?
yeah, the break glass account. So we try to do either bi-yearly or yearly business reviews with the client, and that would be the time where we go through the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for a client. And typically at that time, what we're going to do is we're going to have two break glass accounts as per the recommendation and best practice that should always be followed. And so what we'll do is we'll test that the FIDO key is still working, because you should always protect your break glass account with the client. And then we also, there's a blog post out there on how we specifically do our break glass setup. But yeah, I would say at least once a year is optimal, if not twice a year.
Yeah, yeah, cool. It's amazing what you've shown so far, also from an MSP perspective. If I'm new to this topic, where do I start? Do we have some guidance and advice from here and further?
Yeah, perfect. That's a great question. I know for me that was one of the hardest parts, was figuring out where to start. And Microsoft's got some great guidance. But what I have found has helped me is there's a number of MVPs that exist out there that are doing this on a day-to-day basis. And they've really provided a lot of tribal knowledge that I think really gets you kind of off on the correct foot. What I found and what I recommend is, at least for me, is finding MVPs in the industry that have conditional access out there. There's a number of them. I wanted to highlight a couple of them that I have found are very helpful. And so for me, I started off with Daniel Krumlaun and some of his conditional accesses policy. And from there, I started to gain some advanced policies. And it was, I believe, Kenneth Circum, who is an amazing security architect, and he's got a GitHub with a ton of policies, ideas, and similar documentation that really get you off on the right foot. But if you're brand new and that's a little overwhelming, I would say actually I would consider him a friend. Lewis Berry is a Microsoft MVP in security with a passion for Intune, and he's got an amazing post that was highlighted a couple weeks ago. It's probably one of the most generalized and just basic approaches to conditional access. He actually builds out and gives you his entire policy list, and it's about 12 policies. And I would say that these are policies that I agree with that every client should have. And he does a great job of breaking down exactly how you should get these deployed out, what their purpose is. And I would say this is probably one of the best places to start if you're new to conditional access and you're looking to get a secure baseline kind of built out. This would be a great way and a great starting point to get that done.
All right, awesome. We will share the links later
Yeah.
on this video. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
Also for the amazing presentation and straight into demo. I really like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts that you want to close up for today?
Yeah, let me I guess, again, one of my passions is to show the gaps that exist within the security landscape and how Azure can play a pivotal role in doing that. And so this past year I started my own blog. And that's where I talk about a lot of the concepts on secure cloud foundation, how I manage these things at scale, kind of the future with sync passkeys. So would love for people to go check it out, take a look at some of the articles and see if there's any way it could help them. I touch on the entire aspect of licensing and getting and trying to change the customer mindset, up to, exist how I deploy out security policies through Bicep and using other tools to deploy conditional access out at scale. So I would love for people to go take a look at those. And as always, I'm super active on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn and talk security, I'm always a fan. So please reach out to me and let's have conversations. I think that's really what makes this industry so exciting, is so many people able to have these kind of conversations.
I totally agree. John, once again, thank you very much. Also for everybody at home, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you have some questions, please leave a comment below. And otherwise, for now, I would say take care until next time.
All right.